The president continues to abuse the government and the powers of arrest, of detention, indictment, prosecution, jailing even, to go after critics. This is a diverse list of targets. And while some people are busy and have looked away, and there were Republicans who initially said, well, what's one or two cases? We're going to show you tonight we're way past that, with new developments in the key case of something that many people thought wouldn't happen in America, journalists rounded up and indicted for their coverage. What all the people targeted have in common is that they have criticized Trump, even if they once were Trump officials or Republicans.
Everybody needs to pay attention right now because something just happened that I honestly never thought I'd see this early into a second term. We are now officially in impeachment territory.
At what point in your view constitutionally, Mr. Cobb, how many such cases targeting critics become a high crime, become impeachable? One or two, maybe people of good faith debate. 5 or 6 is more than we've had in decades. We'll put the chart back up to remind people as we end the week, because it's grown a lot this week with Mr. Lemon as well in court.
Before you roll your eyes, before you say, oh, come on, we've been through this before. Nothing ever happens. Just hear me out, because this time there are formal written, fully drafted articles of impeachment being circulated against both President Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Real articles, real legal documents, real accusations of obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and turning the entire Department of Justice into what critics are calling a personal hit squad for the president. A major public interest watchdog group, Free Speech for People, just publicly called on Congress to impeach and remove Bondi, saying she has committed unconstitutional abuses of executive power.
Are you considering, or would you support attempting to impeach the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, as some of other colleagues have suggested as possible?
I mean, look, I think everything is on the table here, but people are coming up with solutions that require a majority in Congress. So we know the Republicans are in control in the House, they're in control in the Senate. So when people say, you know, let's impeach Bondi, let's impeach Robert F. Kennedy, let's impeach Trump or whomever, I say, bring me some Republicans and we can have a conversation. Otherwise, what happens is what happened the other day to...
Another organization released its own set of impeachment articles. By what number does it become a potentially impeachable offense? Well, it should only be one. If there's one fraudulent, unsupported indictment that's brought for personal reasons, political reasons in which the facts are distorted and the law is abused, that alone should be impeachable. You know, the multitude of cases that we've had now certainly provides a wealth of evidence that could be used to impeach Pam Bondi. I think, you know, it's probably difficult to extend her performance and the illegal and unconstitutional, unethical way that she's managed the Justice Department all the way to the president.
Over the last several months, the investigative committees of the House have been engaged in an impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump's efforts to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 elections, efforts that compromised our national security and threatened the integrity of our elections. Throughout this inquiry, he has attempted to conceal the evidence from Congress and from the American people.
But the president, you know, on impeachment alone, you know, that issue, there's so many things in the column that deserve impeachment. You know, taking a $500 million bribe from the Slow You Down, because you're sure accusing both Trump and Bondi of obstructing justice and elevating the executive branch above Congress by flat-out refusing to hand over documents that Congress has every legal right to see. Now, look, I know what some people are thinking. These are just watchdog groups. They're not Congress. They can't actually impeach anyone. And you're right. Technically, only the House can bring articles of impeachment. You're very knowledgeable about these things. And so you're referring to, of course, the impeachment clause is a congressional power under the Constitution for both of the president. That's where we hear about it the most. But you're reminding people it exists for other officers. Are you suggesting that if the Democrats were to win the House, because we can see how this has not gotten oversight from most Republicans?
I called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, for threatening judges and for calling for the execution of members of Congress. If ever there was a person who ought to be impeached, it's Donald John Trump. Now, there are many people who don't want to see this happen. They don't want to vote for impeachment. Well, there were people who didn't want to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but they marched on.
A few criticize it, but very few. You're suggesting that they could also try to impeach, say, a Bondi Blanche, those responsible for this miscarriage of politicized justice. But here's why this matters. This is how it starts. Outside groups draft the language. Legal scholars lay out the case. Pressure builds. Media picks it up. Lawmakers start getting asked about it. And eventually someone in Congress has to either pick it up or explain why they won't. Yes, Lenec and any other administration would have been gone long ago. But certainly this type of conduct would never have been tolerated by any other president without requesting his resignation. And frankly, the president shouldn't have to request the resignation of anybody with integrity in those positions when confronted with that. Conversation is happening right now in hallways on Capitol Hill.
And they prescribed a remedy, and that remedy is impeachment. It is an extraordinary remedy and one that I've been reluctant to recommend until the actions of President Trump gave Congress no alternative. We stand here today because the president's continuing abuse of his power has left us no choice. To do nothing would make ourselves complicit in the president's abuse of his high office, the public trust, and our national security.
In Democratic strategy meetings, on social media where these articles are going viral. Let me tell you exactly what Trump and Bondi are being accused of. The charges are not vague. Misconduct of this type, in the in history. Even Nixon resigned, when humiliated. Lutnick's testimony interesting because he tries to minimize the incident on the island where he took his wife and children. And this is, keep in mind, this is 7 years after he said he had no further contact with Epstein. He said that it all ended in 2005 when he and his wife walked out of his house. Disturbed about their next door neighbor, who remained their next door neighbor. And then also it's not only did he lie about the island visit and that conduct, but within another year or two after the island visit, he and Epstein both invested multi-million dollars in the same joint venture. So these are deep ties. In Europe, people who are just mentioned in the files are resigning. A Lutnick having lied about his participation, should be long gone. They are specific, detailed, and absolutely damning. We're talking about the president publicly ordering his attorney general to go after his political enemies by name. Trump posting on social media in his own words, demanding that Bondi indict people like New York Attorney General Letitia James, former Congressman Adam Schiff, and former FBI Director James Comey. His message was basically, they're guilty. Go get them. Justice must be served now. Not because there's evidence of crimes, not because a grand jury found probable cause, but because these are people who investigated Trump, who challenged Trump, who got on Trump's bad side. That is not law enforcement. That is revenge. That is using the most powerful law enforcement apparatus on the planet as a weapon against personal enemies. If the idea of a president telling his AG, go indict that person because I don't like them, doesn't make you deeply uncomfortable, regardless of your politics, then I don't know what country you think you're living in. Let's unpack this layer by layer. Start with Pam Bondi, because she's at the center of all this. Bondi was Florida's Attorney General before becoming Trump's AG. Here's a detail the people pushing for impeachment want everyone to remember. Back when Trump was running the Trump Foundation, his charity made an illegal $25,000 donation to a political group supporting Bondi's campaign. Illegal as in charities cannot make political donations. The Trump Foundation literally broke the law to support Bondi. This was right around the time Bondi's office was considering whether to investigate Trump University for fraud. And wouldn't you know it, after that donation came through, Bondi's office decided not to investigate. What a coincidence. Such cases targeting critics become a high crime, become impeachable. 1 or 2, maybe people of good faith debate. 5 or 6 is more than we've had in decades. We'll put the chart back up to remind people as we end the week, because it's grown a lot this week with Mr. Lemon as well in court. What number does it become a potentially impeachable offense? So I'm not so sure about Blanche whether, the confession that he extorted out of Gazillion Maxwell in exchange for favorable treatment, whether that rises up to an impeachable offense. Perhaps it does. But certainly with regard to Bondi, she obviously unfit for office based on her performance yesterday. That's the foundation of this relationship. Trump and Bondi have been ethically tangled for years, and now she's running the entire DOJ for him. Critics say she's not enforcing the law. She's enforcing Trump's grudges. And the evidence is not subtle. Trump literally posted demanding specific people be indicted. Then the DOJ under Bondi started going after those exact people. Letitia James, who sued Trump and won a massive civil fraud judgment, suddenly found herself in a federal investigation. Adam Schiff, who led the first impeachment against Trump, targeted. James Comey, the FBI director Trump fired, targeted. These aren't random investigations. These are political prosecutions ordered by the president on social media for the world to see. Then there's the obstruction piece, which is even more alarming. Congress has been trying to get documents from the DOJ. They've sent requests, issued demands saying, "We have oversight authority. We have a constitutional right to see these records. Hand them over." What has the DOJ done? They've stalled. They've stonewalled. They've done partial releases that lawmakers call deceptive, releasing some pages while holding back others, redacting key information. When lawmakers pushed back, they were told to pound sand. Senior Democrats have called it a blatant cover-up. The impeachment articles cite all this as evidence that Trump and Bondi are placing the executive branch above Congress, above the law, above the Constitution. Now, let's talk political reality. Do Democrats have the votes to impeach right now? No. The House is controlled by Republicans. Getting Republican members to impeach a Republican president is almost impossible. It would take a massive shift in public opinion, Republican voters turning on Trump, individual members deciding their oath matters more than political survival. But the fact these articles exist, that credible organizations are behind them, changes the conversation. It puts impeachment back in a mainstream political dialogue. It forces every member of Congress to either engage with the accusations or explain why they won't. And it gives Democrats a powerful messaging tool heading into the midterms. Now, every Republican running for re-election has to answer. Do you think the president ordering his AG to indict political opponents is acceptable? Do you think the DOJ should be a weapon against the president's enemies? Do you think it's okay for the executive branch to ignore congressional oversight? The polls are interesting. A clear majority of Americans, including many independents, are uncomfortable with politically motivated prosecutions. Around 6 out of 10 say the Justice Department should be independent from White House influence. Trump's approval has been sliding steadily, partly because of these stories. People don't like chaos. People don't like the feeling that government is being run for one person's benefit. What does this actually mean for the country? The Department of Justice is supposed to be independent. Criminal prosecutions should be based on evidence, not presidential grudges. The DOJ investigates crimes, not people. You investigate a crime and follow the evidence. You don't start with a person you don't like and go looking for something to charge them with. That's the difference between a justice system and a political weapon. What's being alleged is that Trump and Bondi have erased that line. They've turned investigate the crime into investigate my enemies. Once you establish that a president can use federal law enforcement to punish political opponents, you break something that cannot easily be fixed. This power doesn't just belong to Trump. It belongs to the presidency. Whatever Trump gets away with, the next president can do too. If you're a Republican cheering this because targets are Democrats, what happens when a Democratic president uses the same playbook against Republicans? That's the precedent being set. This isn't about Trump versus Democrats. It's about whether any president can use the Justice Department as a personal enforcement arm. What happens next? The odds of Trump being impeached and removed are very low. Republicans control the House. Even if every Democrat voted for impeachment, they'd need Republican votes. In the Senate, you need a 2/3 supermajority to convict. There's no scenario where enough Republican senators break with their party. But impeachment isn't just about removal. It's about the public record. It's about forcing a vote that puts every member of Congress on record saying either this is acceptable or this is not. That record follows them forever into every re-election campaign, every history book. The groups pushing these articles know the math. They're playing a longer game, building the case, creating the paper trail, making sure historians see that people raise the alarm. Then there's the midterm angle. Even if impeachment goes nowhere in the House, the conversation itself damages the GOP. Everyday voters hear impeachment, weaponized DOJ, political prosecutions, Republicans play defense. Every town hall where a constituent asks, "Do you support what Bondi is doing?" is danger for a Republican incumbent in a swing district. Democrats will keep this alive, keep putting Republicans in uncomfortable positions, forcing them to defend the indefensible or break with Trump. Some in tight races will start cracking, putting distance between themselves and Trump. When that happens, internal Republican divisions blow wide open. Here's the final thing that keeps me up at night. We've gotten used to this. That's the scariest part. We've gotten so used to the chaos, the norm eroding, the president attacking the justice system, going after his enemies, defying Congress, treating the Constitution like a suggestion that people have stopped being shocked. They hear impeachment articles and shrug. They hear politically motivated prosecutions and change the channel. They hear obstruction of justice and scroll past it. That normalization, that slow acceptance of things unthinkable 10 years ago, is more dangerous than any single abuse of power. When a country stops being outraged by the abuse of its institutions, when citizens stop demanding accountability, that's not stability. That's surrender. I don't care where you fall politically. Surrender is not something any American should be comfortable with. So yeah, we've got impeachment articles circulating against the president and his attorney general. We've got the DOJ being used as a political weapon. We've got Congress being defied. We've got prosecutors walking out because they can't stomach what's happening. And we've got a country slowly getting used to all of it like a frog in water getting hotter 1 degree at a time. The only question that matters is whether enough people will notice the temperature before it's too late. Because the water is getting very, very warm and nobody is reaching for the dial.